The supposed event that propelled America into the conflict in Vietnam is known as the Gulf of Tonkin incident, but more accurately, it was two incidents, sort of. Questions about what did and did not happen in the Gulf of Tonkin in early August of 1964 have persisted for nearly 6 decades. However, when the National Security Agency declassified nearly 200 documents between 2005 and 2006, much of what we thought we knew about the incident was turned upside down. Though heavily redacted, more than 100 of the documents had previously been classified as top secret. Contents included phone and meeting transcripts, sketchy timelines cobbled together by NSA and Department of Defense officials after the events took place, and signals intelligence data and messages that had been electronically intercepted by the USS Maddox. It's now generally accepted that the Gulf of Tonkin incident did occur, but that the North Vietnamese attack was in retaliation to a string of instigations perpetrated by the South Vietnamese Navy, with planning and intelligence help from the US Navy. On the other hand, the second incident, that purportedly took place a few days later, never happened at all. At least until recently, the official position of the United States was that the USS Maddox was attacked by Vietnamese gunboats, and that at the time the destroyer had been in international waters. Of course, the incident was used by the Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, and President Johnson to justify the retaliatory strikes, which ultimately led to the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, and ultimately the war itself. And these assertions aren't just baseless theories. In fact, much of the source material for this video came from the US Naval Institute. In the end, it's now clear that high-level politicians, military officers, and intelligence personnel obscured data, distorted facts, and deceived the American public and international community, and that as a result, the United States entered the war in Vietnam looking like a victim instead of an aggressor. In early 1964, South Vietnamese Navy commandos began conducting a series of attacks and intelligence-gathering missions along the coast of North Vietnam. Consisting of aerial reconnaissance, naval sabotage, and insertions onto the mainland, the missions were collectively known as Plan 34A operations. The United States didn't officially enter the war until a year later, on March the 8th of 1965, when the 9th Maine Expeditionary Brigade landed at China Beach near Da Nang. But though the South Vietnamese were actually carrying out the operations, they were receiving logistical, planning, and intelligence support from the Americans. In the early going, 34A operations yielded few noteworthy results, and worse yet, many commandos were killed, captured, or disappeared altogether. Nonetheless, behind the scenes in the summer of 1964, Commander of the U.S. Military Assistance Command, Lieutenant General William Westmoreland, upped the ante. Now, instead of covert insertions and intelligence ops, the South Vietnamese Navy would focus on shore bombardment using everything from unguided rockets and recoilless rifles to mortars and heavy machine guns, all of which would be fired from fast patrol boats. The 34A operations were highly classified because under international law, America's involvement was at least suspect, and it was probably illegal. Nonetheless, while the South Vietnamese were taking the fight to their communist counterparts, US Navy vessels and reconnaissance aircraft were busy gathering intelligence. Codenamed Desoto patrols, the Navy monitored radio transmissions and radar activity at coastal installations, noted troop and equipment movements, and tracked Vietnamese junks to determine whether they were funneling men and materials up the Mekong River. After the Gulf of Tonkin incident, the official line was that there'd never been any integration or coordination between American and South Vietnamese forces, but this just wasn't the case. In late July of 1964, USS Maddox left Taiwan for her Desoto patrol station just off the coast of Vietnam. Equipped with state-of-the-art electronics equipment, the destroyer's mission was to patrol in international waters between the demilitarized zone and the Chinese border. On the night of the 30th of July, Maddox was on station in the Gulf of Tonkin while a 34A operation was launched against Hon Mi Island. South Vietnamese commandos in 2 boats fired machine guns and small cannons at the island's radar installation, while 25 miles to the south, additional units were carrying out a similar attack against Hon No Island. After observing North Vietnamese torpedo boats pursuing the South Vietnamese vessels that had attacked Hon Mi, Maddox withdrew from the area. Ironically, Commander Herbert Ogier later stated that at the time had been unaware that there'd been any South Vietnamese operations in the area, but whether or not he was telling the truth, by August 1st, Maddox was back on patrol in the Gulf of Tonkin. On the morning of August 2nd, the ship's communications personnel intercepted transmissions stating that North Vietnamese forces were preparing retaliatory strikes, possibly on Maddox herself, although it's not clear if the ship was named specifically. On board Maddox, Commander of Destroyer Division 192, Captain John J. Herrick, ordered the ship out to sea to avoid an unwanted confrontation. But a short time later, Herrick reversed his original decision and ordered Maddox to steam back towards Hon Mi Island in the vicinity of the aforementioned North Vietnamese torpedo boats. While en route, just after 1430 hours, 3 North Vietnamese boats were detected approaching from the west at high rates of speed. Less than a half hour later, they were within 10,000 yards of the Maddox. Herrick ordered crews manning the ship's 5-inch guns to fire multiple warning shots across the lead boat's bow, after which it launched a torpedo before turning abruptly and heading back in the direction from which it had come. Then a second boat launched 2 more torpedoes, but it was subsequently hit by cannon fire. Re-engaging, the first boat once again turned back toward Maddox and launched another torpedo, but it too was heavily damaged. All told, the engagement lasted less than 20 minutes, after which 4 F-8 Crusaders that had been dispatched from USS Ticonderoga appeared overhead. Piloted by Navy Commander James Stockdale, the lead F-8 passed directly over the undamaged Maddox at 15:30, at which time Stockdale noted that the North Vietnamese patrol boats were headed toward the mainland. He and other pilots made multiple strafing runs on the fleeing boats with their 20mm cannons. All 3 of the boats were damaged, but the first 2 managed to escape, while the third was left smoldering in the water. The following day, Maddox resumed her Desoto patrol, and to highlight America's resolve, President Johnson ordered the 420-foot, 127-meter destroyer USS Turner Joy to join her. On the morning of August 4th, US intelligence intercepted another transmission indicating that the communists were planning a series of offensive naval operations in and around the Gulf of Tonkin. But unlike during the previous incident, where the skies had been clear and the seas had been calm, on that day visibility was limited and high winds and thunderstorms had churned up large waves. In addition, both the Maddox's SPS-40 long-range radar and the Turner Joy's fire control radar weren't working properly. That evening, Herrick ordered Maddox and Turner Joy out to sea to give them ample room to maneuver in the event that they were attacked. At 20:40, crewmen on board the Maddox began tracking a number of unidentified contacts. Now nearly 100 miles off the coast, it appeared as though multiple vessels were approaching from various directions, but due to the malfunctioning systems on board both ships, tracking them was proving to be nearly impossible. In fact, as the storm worsened, some of the contacts disappeared, only to reappear dozens of miles away on the other side of the ship. For nearly 2 hours, Maddox and Turner Joy changed their speed and maneuvered erratically to make themselves difficult targets for the enemy boats that they thought were lurking in the darkness. Personnel on both destroyers reported hearing machine gun fire and seeing muzzle flashes, torpedo wakes, searchlight beams, and even the dim lights inside the cockpits of enemy aircraft. Gunners fired wildly into the darkness, with everything at their disposal, ultimately discharging nearly 400 cannon rounds and half a dozen depth charges. Just when the mysterious engagement ended at approximately 21:35, Commander Stockdale once again arrived on the scene in his F-8, but this time he was alone. Stockdale made repeated runs between the 2 ships for more than an hour, searching for the enemy vessels, but he detected no sign of them. Stockdale famously said later that he had the best seat in the house, but that as far as he could tell, the destroyers were shooting at what he referred to as phantom targets. In fact, all he saw that night was black water and American firepower. Like Stockdale, Captain Herrick began having serious doubts shortly after the alleged attacks. He ultimately concluded that no North Vietnamese boats had attacked the American ships, and that the false sightings and sketchy radar contacts were the result of poorly trained, inexperienced, and overeager crewmen and their malfunctioning equipment. During the entire encounter, Turner Joy reported no torpedo sightings. Likewise, Herrick thought it likely that radar operators on board Maddox had heard the ship's massive propellers slashing through the choppy seas and misinterpreted the signatures as belonging to enemy torpedoes. In addition, none of the destroyer's gunners have been able to lock onto, let alone hit any targets, probably because the fire control computers were keying in on undulating wave crests. Recognizing the magnitude of the situation, Herrick sent a high-priority flash message to Honolulu in the early morning hours of August 4th. His message read, "Review of action makes many reported contacts and torpedoes fired appear doubtful. Freak weather effects on radar and overeager sonar operators, they have accounted for many reports. No actual visual sightings by Maddox. Suggest complete evaluation before any further action is taken." Both during and after the incident, confusion reigned in Washington. Then again, much of what appeared to be confusion could have been political theater orchestrated by elements within the government that were eager to go to war. Whatever the case, during and immediately after the Second Phantom Skirmish, dozens of calls were made between President Johnson, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, CIA headquarters in Langley, and the National Military Command Center inside the Pentagon. In Hawaii, Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet, Admiral Ulysses Simpson Grant Sharp, was in constant contact with Captain Herrick, but the Navy men were communicating via flash message, not actually speaking to one another by phone. At approximately 0300 hours local time, Herrick sent a transmission that contradicted at least some of what it stated previously. He now claimed that the details of the attack presented a confusing picture. Some of the crewmen he'd interviewed confirmed that they had in fact seen boats and torpedoes in the water, as well as cockpit lights on enemy aircraft, while others were unsure if they'd seen anything at all. By now, the prevailing sentiment on both the Maddox and the Turner Joy was that there hadn't been an attack. Herrick still considered it possible, but this conclusion was largely based on an intercepted transmission sent from one of the supposed North Vietnamese patrol boats to its base on the coast. It stated that 2 American planes had been downed, and that at least one of the ships had been damaged, and that a few North Vietnamese sailors had been killed. Though inconclusive amid the mounting doubt, this report was seen as a valuable scrap of evidence, albeit an unsubstantiated one. However, American aircraft hadn't arrived on scene until after the supposed attack ended. None had been shot down, and neither ship had sustained any damage. Just after 1600 hours in Washington, McNamara phoned Sharp in Hawaii and asked if he thought that there'd been an attack. Sharp's response, in part, was that it was possible. On the other hand, Sharp stated that the torpedo sightings were probably false, that the conditions had been atrocious, that the equipment hadn't been working properly, and that many of the ship's radar and sonar men were young and inexperienced. As a result, he suggested postponing retaliatory strikes until it was definitively determined what had happened. Back in Washington, Air Force Lieutenant General David Pacina was watching the events unfold from the National Military Command Center when he received a phone call from Sharp. Now, Sharp stated that as far as he was concerned, the signals intelligence intercept was about as good a proof as they were likely to get. After considering the situation, McNamara concluded that he had all the proof that he needed and, as they say, the rest is history. Shortly thereafter, at 23:30 hours, President Johnson appeared on national television and announced his intent to retaliate against the North Vietnam's repeated acts of violence against the armed forces of the United States. A response, which he noted, was being carried out as he spoke. Back on the carrier Ticonderoga, Commander Stockdale was preparing plans for airstrikes against targets in the north. But unlike Johnson, McNamara, and Herrick, Stockdale had little doubt about what had actually happened. He later said that the United States was about to start a war under false pretenses. Yet despite his misgivings, Stockdale diligently planned the reprisal, after which he personally led 18 strike aircraft in a mission against the petroleum storage facility at Vin. Although the facility was obliterated, 2 planes were shot down, 1 airman was killed, and another was captured. Then on August the 7th, Congress approved the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, which President Johnson signed into law 3 days later. Only 2 senators objected, Wayne Morse of Oregon and Ernest Gruning of Alaska. The resolution authorized presidents to take all measures necessary to prevent further aggression against America's armed forces. More interestingly, Congress hastily eliminated the standard system of checks and balances between the government and the military. Now, with America going to war in Vietnam, President Johnson likens the Gulf of Tonkin resolution to a portly grandmother's nightshirt, because as he put it, it covered everything. Historians have long suspected that the second attack in the Gulf of Tonkin never occurred, and that the resolution was based on faulty evidence, or worse yet, just outright lies. For decades, there was no smoking gun that Johnson, McNamara, or anyone else had intentionally misrepresented intelligence or lied about the incident. However, the aforementioned declassified documents largely substantiated what no one had been able to prove, that no second attack ever took place. Furthermore, the documents revealed a disturbingly deliberate attempt by Robert McNamara to distort the evidence and mislead Congress, the international community, and the American public. Perhaps the most definitive study into the matter was conducted by official NSA historian Robert J. Hanyok. After poring through the evidence, he concluded that there had been an attack on August the 2nd, but not on August the 4th. He also claims that both Johnson and McNamara considered the signals intelligence intercept message a pivotal piece of evidence, and that Congress's approval of the Gulf of Tonkin resolution was largely because of it. But Hanyok also discovered that of all the intercepted signals intelligence messages, approximately 90% were emitted from reports sent to the White House and the Pentagon. Of those that were sent, most contained unexplainable analytic errors, faulty translations, and intentionally altered timestamps. In a few cases, large chunks of messages were deleted altogether, multiple messages were combined into one, and fabricated messages were passed off as authentic. Others disappeared altogether. But what about the intercepted North Vietnamese battle transmission? On further examination, it was found to be referring to the attack that took place on August 2nd. During that attack, the North Vietnamese boats were in constant contact with their coastal bases, and nearly all of the messages transmitted between them were intercepted. Yet on August 4th, when the second attack was said to have taken place, there were no transmissions whatsoever. When testifying before a joint session of the Armed Services and Senate Foreign Relations Committees on August 6th, McNamara bobbed and weaved around questions posed by Oregon Senator Wayne Morse. Confident that each and every loose end had been adequately tied up, he claimed that the United States Navy played no part, nor was it in any way associated with the 34A operations carried out by the armed forces of South Vietnam. At a Pentagon press conference the following day, McNamara was asked if he'd been aware of any engagements between the navies of North and South Vietnam. To this question, he responded with a timeless phrase uttered almost exclusively by those with deceptive intentions. No, none that I know of. Yet an audio clip released by the Johnson Library in 2005 revealed that McNamara had admitted to the true nature of the 34A operations to the president all the way back in August of 1964. On the recording, he told Johnson that we, meaning the United States, had 4 PT boats manned by South Vietnamese soldiers attacking radar installations on 2 North Vietnamese islands. During another meeting of the National Security Council in early August, President Johnson asked whether the attack could be interpreted as North Vietnam's desire to go to war with the United States. CIA Director John McCone answered nonchalantly that the North Vietnamese were only reacting to the attacks on their islands. In a moment of frustration or perhaps remorse, just days after the passage of the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, Johnson famously opined, "Hell, those damn stupid sailors were just shooting at flying fish." 93-year-old Robert McNamara died in his bed in Washington on July 6, 2009. All told, more than 58,000 American servicemen died in the conflict, and according to the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, nearly 2 million civilians perished, as well as approximately 1.1 million regular army and Viet Cong fighters. While many supporters of the war consider McNamara a patriot, those on the other side of the argument tend to prefer the term war criminal. At least, hypothetically, McNamara once referred to himself as the latter, but ironically it had nothing to do with Vietnam. Before the dropping of the atomic bombs on Imperial Japan, young Robert McNamara had worked with General Curtis LeMay coordinating the firebombing of Tokyo. Taking place on the night of March 10, 1945, and into the following morning, Operation Meeting House resulted in nearly 100,000 civilian deaths, making it the single most destructive aerial bombardment in history. LeMay once said that if America had lost the war, he and McNamara would have been tried as war criminals and probably executed. In an interview decades later, McNamara agreed that both he and LeMay probably behaved as war criminals. Even if the incident in the Gulf of Tonkin had never happened, it's likely that the United States would have entered the war anyway. What we may never know, however, is why McNamara lied, and who, if anybody, was pulling the strings behind the scenes. Did America enter the war in Vietnam to promote freedom and democracy, or was it simply a matter of money? If it's the latter, one need only look at who profited. And the answer, of course, is big defense contractors. Collectively, when inflation is taken into account, these and other companies raked in billions of dollars in profit, and some of their shareholders were the very congressmen and senators who unanimously passed the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. Yet despite the abundance of evidence against him, McNamara never officially fessed up to lying. In fact, he remains aloofly unapologetic, saying, "I learned early on never to answer the question that is asked of you. Answer the question that you wish you had been asked of you. And quite frankly, I follow that rule. It's a very good rule." 5 decades before either occurred, isolationist California Senator Hiram Johnson may have summed up the Gulf of Tonkin incident and Vietnam War best when he lamented that the first casualty of war was almost always the truth.